But without further ado, I want to ask you to join me in welcoming our panelists tonight. And please, guys, if you join the stage, and please give a warm welcome to our panelists. So, a few housekeeping items as we get in order. We're going to do formal Q&A at the end of all this. So we want to spend a few minutes talking about a few topics that we've discussed as a group that I think are relevant for the topic at hand. Another thing is, I think we all know this given who we are and where we play. This is a safe and welcoming environment. Just be mindful. We're going to be very open about what we talk about here. Be mindful of your tweeting, be mindful of everything else. We're also filming the video tonight. We'll send this out to all the participants. And I mentioned the survey cards. They are super, super important to us. So to begin, I'd like each of you to, if you could spend a few minutes just introducing yourselves, introducing your organizations. And if you can tell me a little bit about how the role of HR or people or employee success has evolved in your organizations over the last few years and become more strategic. I think that'll help set a framework for us all. Tell us a little bit about the role at PayPal.
So I'm Danielle Sutton. I'm glad to be here. This is my first Udemy event, so thank you, Darren, for inviting me. I'm a VP of People for PayPal's Global Product and Engineering Organizations, and you might be familiar with some of the most iconic brands that would be embodied within that, but that's Braintree, Venmo, Zoom, Paydiant, and many of the companies that we've acquired over the years. We have been on quite the journey. July 20th marked the 1-year anniversary since separating from eBay. So it feels like we're in a brand new company. We are, for the very first time in 16 years, sort of reimagining and reinventing ourselves from the inside out. And what that means is, from a people perspective, it requires a lot of change, a lot of resiliency, a lot of agility to be able to drive and manage that sort of change and scale it on a global scale. So it's been a fun place to be. I will be reaching my 5-year anniversary next month. Very excited about that. But to have been part of the organization prior to when we were part of eBay and now as an independent company, and the amount of growth that we've been experiencing is just, it's unimaginable. And what that is now requiring from a people and HR perspective is someone who can not only lead strategically, but be much more ahead of the business and to drive change more strategically, to be current on all the trends and to help sort of influence some of the decision making that gets made at the senior executive level. So it's quite an interesting place to be right now.
Interesting times given the spin out.
Yes.
So Flora, you see this from a very different perspective right now. You're on your way to scaling to the 13,000, 20,000. Tell us a little bit about your organization,
Sure,
which is not British Petroleum.
Yes, it's not. BP is not British Petroleum. Everyone asks me, you work at BP? It's like, no. We're revolutionizing the way cars are bought and sold in online. And it's a daunting task. I joined BP when we were 70, and it was only a year and 3 months ago. Right now, we are 250 employees in 16 hubs across the United States. My point of view is a little different because I've been in HR for only 3.5 years, post business school. And the reason why I decided to get into HR in the first place is because I saw how the larger companies like Facebook, like eBay, like Google, like Medallia were providing a different type of HR to the employees and partnering with the business in a way that made sense. And that's why I decided to get in HR in the first place. So for us is, we don't do, and we'll get into that, but we don't do a lot of planning. It's harder because our priorities are the same, but the way we get to them changes. Not every day, but at least every 2 weeks.
Sometimes does it feel like every day?
Sometimes it does, definitely. It's like every second. And I'm amazed by how the war on talent has shifted this way in which HR needs to be involved and needs to help the companies not only attract talent, but really retain it.
So Matt, why don't you tell us a little bit about the experience at Medallia and how you've seen kind of the strategic role of HR develop and unfold?
Sure. So I'm Matt Frost. I'm on our people and culture team at Medallia. We went from about 400 people in 2014 to just under 1,000 now. And so for our people and culture team, that's been, keeping up with the business at each step of the way. So Corey Barker, who's in the audience at 400 people, that meant onboarding and bringing people into our culture and our learning environment at scale in a way that made sense for our size. That meant building our recruiting team and scaling that. That meant getting our own internal processes and systems in order on the HR side. As you evolve, you have more and more people managers and leaders, and you want them to operate and lead in a certain way. And so for us, it's always been about what stage are we now? How can we best help the business? And then we align our HR team to focus in that area.
So I suspect that's one of the themes that we're going to see tonight unfold, since we have a real diversity of size of organization and stage of development. So, as we grow larger, as we get more resources, we can be more strategic. The other thing is that it feels like we're now capable more earlier on in the development of an organization to be strategic at the scale of 500 or 1,000 employees, where it's much more difficult before. How do you now view your role in the organization strategically, and do you have a set charter within the organization? So, Danielle, why don't we get a sense from you? What role do you see for HR in the organization, and has it changed since the spin out from the broader eBay?
It's definitely changed, and as you reflected your comments around how an organization can scale, PayPal is now 18,000 employees globally. We operate in 31, we have offices in 31 countries. We process payments in over 200 countries. We have over 100 currencies that we enable, and so it's a very complex business, and it gets more complex the more companies that we acquire. So it's constantly changing, and I no longer have an expectation that I need to be an expert in everything. And so one of the things that I learned and I continue to practice as a result of joining PayPal is I am a customer of this company even before I am an employee. So one of the things that I would encourage all of you to do, in addition to what Annette said in terms of being with your client and understanding the business, one of the best ways to understand the business is to use the products. And so I was a PayPal customer, an eBay customer before I joined. I use our credit product. It's phenomenal. If I could use Zoom to transfer money within the United States, I would do that too. It's coming. But there's nothing more empowering, I think, than to influence by way of a customer point of view. And that's what we in the HR community are trying to embody by how we embrace what we manufacture, because we can also influence what our products look like and how people consume them as well.
I think that almost visceral understanding of the customer and customer centricity is critical. So Matt, I'm curious in your organization how you've seen kind of HR unfold, or the role that at Medallia you guys see for HR internally. And do you even call it HR?
Yeah, so we call it people and culture. There are a set of fundamental things that HR always has to be able to do. I feel like that's the people side, and the culture side is really where the opportunity lies, I think, and that's how teams work together and solve problems, and what you stand for as a company and how your values come to life. And so I'm not exactly sure why we chose people and culture, but that's how I think about it. I think the opportunity really comes in when you start to become more proactive about things. And the only way you can do that is, like they've already said, is if you actually truly understand your customers, your employees, and everything else. And I think we probably do that okay right now, but we have a chance to be more and more proactive over time.
And how is that proactivity received? So when you're reaching out to business leaders, I would imagine that sometimes the help is welcome, that sometimes people might be taken aback. Is it universally received well, or do you need to almost earn the trust of the business leader?
I think you definitely have to earn the trust, but there's no playbook for running a company that grows from 400 to 1,000 people, so they're trying to figure it out as well. In some ways, they're quite open because they're trying to figure out how to best run their teams and hit their goals, and if you have an idea or a point of view and insights to bring to the table, then they're kind of all ears.
Darren, I was just going to say, I was talking to an individual in the audience. I don't remember his name. I think it was Greg, but he works for an analytics organization, and I was explaining to him that I think data and insights is like our new currency from an HR perspective and how we can add value. We have a lot of information and data at our fingertips that we are probably underutilizing on a massive scale, and being able to translate that data and that insights into things that are very meaningful and can help drive business solutions is kind of adding that value, being proactive, and how you can just go from being someone that's very tactical to someone who's critically important to making decisions around the table.
It's interesting. I'm going to throw these away for a second, so we're going to go off script a little bit. Because I had the same conversation, not the same conversation, but similar conversation in the audience. And it also reflects back to HR Tech and some of the trade shows around HR technology that I've been to recently. It seems like the message is around predictive analytics with both the big players today, that's where they're going to. Like, hey, we know we can do comp and ben, we know that we can do performance management, we know that we can tie all these together. But the new story that's being told is about predictive analytics. Same thing with startups, obviously doing that in a different way. I guess my question is, do you buy it and have you seen it? That seems to be what we as an industry, and we're a vendor, right? So we're selling the same thing. That seems to be what we're selling. Are you guys, from your perspective, do you buy it yet? Are you starting to implement it? Are you starting to plan for more big data, advanced analytics, incorporating it into your business process?
I think our challenges are somewhat different because we are a company, we're the world's largest startup. And we have hundreds of mini startups that we've acquired over the years and will continue to do so as part of our corporate development strategy. And so every time you acquire a new company, that just adds more complexity. It's a new set of individuals, new sets of, we're opening in new markets where we didn't have offices. When we acquired Braintree, that was the first time we established a presence in Chicago. And so we didn't know much about the market in Chicago because we didn't have a presence there. So we are starting to place bigger bets. We have a role open, which we're close to filling for VP of Workforce Analytics, because that also feeds into our location strategy around, where do we want to have offices? Where do we want to be? How do we want to operate more efficiently? So it's much bigger than just providing, data on a regular basis, but it is something we're starting to invest in because we realize how important it is, especially given the global scale that we have now.
So I want to go back to Matt's comment about interacting with your customers, right, as business partners. And one of the strategies that we've seen work really effectively is to integrate people and culture, employee success, or HR into the planning process, right? As we're setting our overall corporate plans. So Flora, I'm curious, as you look at BP and you guys are seeing phenomenal growth, you're disrupting an industry. How do you think about, one, a planning cycle for an organization so small, and two, how do you make sure that you have a seat at the table, as Annette was saying, in helping to craft that overall strategy and be the voice of employee success or HR in setting that strategy?
So I think what Annette said is very right. If you're not able to establish a relationship with your workforce populations, we call them BPers, then there's no game, right? So it's very important that we not only sit with them. We have a large part of the population that is just made of mechanics that represent BP every day throughout 16 markets. They're awesome. They are super mission driven, and we owe them everything because they represent us every day. So definitely, I find that the most important thing in being a business partner and leading the people ops team is knowing 100% what people go through and know to speak their language. Because I did not know anything about automotive before I joined BP. Yes, I obviously know what a pretty car looks like, and I'm Italian, so Ferrari and all those things. But I didn't know many of the things, and the best conversation I had about BP and the future of BP were and are with our technicians, who are full-time employees, and those are the best insights that I've ever gotten. Now, I'm very lucky because my co-founders both really believe in people operations as a strategic advisor. As an example, I sit with all the leaders in the staff meeting every Monday, and some of the things that I can plan, I already know in advance because they're common knowledge. So I knew when I joined that we had to have a compensation leveling because otherwise everything would have been out of whack. That's just not good. I knew that at some point we had to put in a performance review cycle that would change a million times, right? Because there are so many theories. And then there is the day-to-day that I can never predict. And my colleagues know that when you ask an HR person, how's it going? The first answer is busy. because there's always something exciting, and we kind of we're drinking from the fire hose.
Then how do you move from that day-to-day to start to integrate what you're doing with the overall business objectives of the group?
I think you listen. From one point of view, you listen to different people in different teams, and as you start picking up the trends of what different parts of the populations that your company need. Then you bring it all together. I mean, it's very hard because when you're a department, I was a department of one for 9 months, and then I inherited a whole team. And it's very hard. I was alone until we were, I think, 150 or close to 200. It's very hard to distinguish the day-to-day, which is a lot of administrative work, to then let's take a step back without sounding, trying to do the right thing. So the way I do it, I always devote a part of the week, or a couple of hours during the week, in which I completely isolate myself and think about, bring everything together so I can, I put together all the information that I got throughout the week, and so I can go back to my founders and say, hey, I think this is going to happen in 3 months. And at the beginning, it was more, it's going to happen. It's not, then it happened, and I established my credibility, and now they listen to me. And by having the founders listening to people operations, everyone else does. And I think it's great. I feel very lucky.
So essentially, this idea of credibility has come up a few times. So we talked about co-location, really living the world of the business leaders that we serve as customers. We've talked about understanding the world of our customers as well and establishing credibility that way. Are there other things that you've done to try to build that trust? And then what do you do if that trust just doesn't seem to be coming? Do you move on, or do you find a way to make it happen? So Matt, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, so the way we align our focus areas in people and culture is directly aligned with the business. So we have an annual plan, just like most companies over a certain size. We revisit that quarterly, and we will revise our people and culture goals quarterly to align with those. So if sales is the challenge and hiring is the bottleneck, then we will allocate our resources into sales hiring and also getting our sales hiring managers up to speed on how to run a great process. If the bottleneck is how they're working with product and design, then maybe we allocate a portion of our people and culture time to figuring out how to help them better work together as a team. So it's really kind of a quarterly refresh based on how each organization is or is not hitting their goals. And we're agile enough to where we will realign to meet that. I think the second part around, if you are not getting the time of day, I think you kind of have to build champions one by one in some way, and you can't, you just kind of have to tackle it that way. The easiest way to build trust is by demonstrating results, and so if you're not seeing those, build trust with each person and kind of pull people that way as opposed to continuing to push.
And Danielle, we were having this conversation before. I mean, you serve technical audiences as well, or a technical team as well.
I do, and it's funny. Working with companies that have been acquired, that don't want to be acquired, is one of the hardest groups to establish trust with. So I've been lucky enough to be paired with those entities that come into PayPal. I don't know why, but I think the first key is you have to understand when you haven't established that trust.
Yeah,
I think sometimes we assume that it's there when it's really not. And one of the things that when I know that I have someone's trust and credibility and it's high, they ask for my advice, they take my advice, they're comfortable allowing me to sort of have their proxy, even if they're not there. There are a couple things that I earmark for myself, which says to me, okay, I have established this person's trust. But it is hard trying to establish trust of 300 people of a company that does not want to be a part of the new brand. And it takes work. It takes a lot of the things that Matt has said. You got to deliver. You got to get the basics right. You can't screw up payroll. Like people need to get their paychecks. And so the foundation and the table stakes need to be in order. And then I think you build from there. But if you're trying to solve world hunger and you haven't figured out how to pay people, that's not going to be a good recipe for establishing trust. So prioritizing those things and being very honest about where your function is. Because I'll be honest with you, when we were a part of eBay, I'm still a very big eBay fan. I sell a lot of stuff on eBay. We were oftentimes sort of at their mercy in terms of we had to do whatever sort of they wanted and carry out and execute on their initiative, even if it didn't align culturally with kind of what we wanted to be from a PayPal perspective. And a lot of the processes were clunky. A lot of it just didn't make sense. It certainly didn't resonate with the companies that we were acquiring, the startups, the innovators, the transformers. And so this is the perfect opportunity we have to design by listening to our customers and trying to establish that trust and credibility from the ground up now.
Is it hard? I mean, were you getting pressure to move faster, to like, hey, listen, you know what to do, just do it, don't listen?
Because that's how every startup, every entrepreneur, my clients, and I have 3 lines of business. I have all of global product and engineering. I also have a credit business, which is separate, as well as our Zoom organization. All of those business leaders are former entrepreneurs, former founders of their company. And there's a lot of passion there. And one of the things I love, and the reason why I have enjoyed my career at PayPal, is I work around a lot of people who are wealthy, who have sold their businesses to us but have made a personal choice to stay there because they want to be there. Why do they want to be there? Because they believe in what they're doing. And there's something about that that's just so cool. I'm not in that position. I aspire to be one day, but I love working around people who are not there for the money. They're there because they're trying to make a difference in the lives of people around the world, and that speaks to me. But to answer your question specifically, they're impatient, and they want what they want when they want it, and they want it yesterday. And the function of HR, when you're rebuilding and starting from the ground up, it takes a lot of time. And so I'm constantly asking for forgiveness, for patience, making trade-offs here and there. And thankfully, they've been okay. It's been a partnership, and it's worked well.
So Flora, I'm curious about how your journey of trust has gone. So you mentioned you were one-person operation. You were doing everything from putting the new Rex on the website, recruiting, making sure people got paid, how do we take care of laptops when people leave, onboarding. It must have been hugely tactical. How did you transition as you scaled? How did you transition to a different role once people had this notion of what Flora did fixed in their minds?
So I think part of my team is here. BP, if you think about a company that runs fast, BP runs 10 times faster. So I got in, we were 70, and there was and my CEO will disagree, I'd say we could have waited a little longer, but there was they felt such a need to go to talk to someone that most people trusted that I was hired for a reason. So my time from the beginning was split between talking to people who wanted someone to talk to, and then building programs. So it's at the beginning it was more. I mean, I would work probably an average of 16 hours a day, and the first 9 months of my life were, as my colleague says, I eat, sleep, and drink BP. I did it in the past. So it was hard because their expectations are high, as my colleagues were saying, and at the same time, though, not every leader understands all the things that go into HR and on payroll and on the administrative tasks that go into it. So I think I was not forced, but I had to take on both roles, and because that's what it took. So at BP, hard work is like everywhere, but I would say even more so, hard work is very well respected, and so I had to earn the trust of the less experienced people who only knew that. So I worked, if I saw someone staying until 10, I would stay until 10:30. And that's how I earned their trust.
So the line of discussion that we've had has really been about HR business partner with the manager. I'm curious about the relationships with individual people. And Matt, I want to toss this one over to you. And how do you think about personal career development? So supporting the career goals of individuals within the business units you support, and what role does that have, and how do you approach it in your job?
I mean, it might be seen as a cop-out answer, but you can't really scale HR if you are reactive and just coaching employees on an individual basis all the time. So equipping your managers to be able to do that and have those types of conversations with people, and that sort of thing. The other thing I think that's important for HR to realize is that like true learning does not happen by putting people into a room like this and doing an all-day training and that sort of thing. Like that's a very easy metric to say that you did something, but true learning happens on the job. And getting managers to believe that and then seeing what role they play in that, which is feedback, reflection, continuously having a conversation about how they can get better, is something that we try to do with our managers. And that, I think, is when people really feel like they're challenged in learning. It's not really something else about going to training sessions and that sort of thing. And our managers really are kind of they are the implementation arm of that. It's not HR.
I agree with both Matt and Annette. I think it is a challenge. And the needs, when we start to segment our employee population, we've got millennials that are, have a certain set of needs. We even have baby boomers and we have Gen X. And so all of their needs are vastly different. And for us, we try to do a lot of asking. But, I think that one of the worst things you can do is drive to solutions before you even know kind of what people want. And so we ask and we try to be as predictive as possible and figure out, okay, well, we know we can't focus on all 18,000, but is there an opportunity to focus on our best and our brightest? And so one of the things that we're doing, we're spending a lot of time on, is really trying to understand who are our highest potential individuals that have the greatest capability to scale and to have greater impact across the organization, who's going to be responsible for really driving those initiatives and our roadmap priorities that are important for us to be able to deliver. And we will probably devote most of our time and resources to that population and try to enable others, the majority, the 70%, and then more self-service and making sure they have the tools that they need. But I think for us, we're in this mode of we're really trying to segment and understand who are the individuals that we need to sort of double down on and invest in from a career development perspective.
So, I think all of us have scaled from startups to large organizations. And I'm curious, right now, where each of you sit, what is the biggest what's the biggest people problem that you face? Flora, why don't we start with you? If you look at the organization, I mean, scaling a startup is a series of prioritizing major problems. What's the biggest problem right now that you're looking at, and how are you addressing it?
I would say growth obviously is a blessing and a curse. And for us, it's what's top of mind for me is that we have this population that is in the field and is the face of our company. And as I was mentioning before, they are very mission driven. We had not long ago, a technician heard that our customer liked this type of candy and put that candy in the car when they delivered. Nobody asked them to do it, but I think it's amazing and incredible. So what's top of mind for me is how do I make sure that technician that was in New York will feel the passion and the drive for BP as we scale, as that team doubles in the next 1, 2 or so years. And what tools of communications are we going to need, and what are we going to develop so there's no gap between if you're in New York, if you're in Oklahoma, if you are HQ, how are we going to do that? And I think one of the things that I'm working on with my team is getting enough people who get the business, they want to be part of the business in the business partner role, who are ready to partner with them and keep the communication open. Also, we have our technicians come to HQ and stay at HQ for 3 months when they're hired, regardless of where they're going to go next, and then they rotate throughout the year. So that's top of mind, and I don't have an answer for that yet, but next time.
Matt, what about you from your seat? What's keeping you up at night? What are the biggest people problems you face?
I think at the macro company level, it's probably communication, and I think then you start to get into some of the mindsets of your leadership team and how they've behaved and how they think about things doesn't always scale as the company does, and it's challenging to break those. I think there are a ton of department-specific challenges related to people that we're trying to solve. On the sales side, a lot of it's around messaging and training and enablement and that sort of thing. So I think that's probably how do we ramp sales directors faster is probably the challenge that we've actually faced probably for a year. We still haven't cracked the nut all the way, and so we're still working on that.
Gosh, I can answer that in many number of ways. Today, I would say we have such a huge opportunity to be world dominant with our new CEO. His vision is to democratize payments and to make it easy for anyone to transact in financially by using PayPal. Whether that is you want to use our credit product to help start your small business, or you want to transfer money to a friend. That's a lofty goal. Obviously, that wasn't something we set out to do 16 years ago, but I certainly believe in that vision, and I think it's within our reach. But it does require, given all of the competing priorities that we have, it requires a degree of collaboration and alignment from a leadership perspective that I think, for the most part, we still are challenged with. And so in my role, I see my ability to enable that by bringing the leaders together, sometimes resolving conflict and being able to, at the end of the day, land on the right business decision that might feel like a trade-off in one person's area, but for the overall company it's the right thing to do because that gets us closer to that vision. So it's fostering that. And some days I feel like I'm a psychiatrist. And really solving needs of people who just want to be heard. So it is helping to drive a much more collaborative and aligned organization so that we can all be marching in the same direction.
So we're going to close with the legacy portion of our panel. If you just have one word of advice on there's one piece of advice as to how do you make HR more strategic in the organization. Matt, we'll start with you. What do you want to leave our audience with?
I think kind of what we started with, which is proactively learn what's going on, whether that's learning what your customers think about your product, whether it's learning what your employees are dealing with on a daily basis. That empathy in getting out there proactively, I think, is like foundational to starting to build trust.
Laura.
Along the same lines, I think it's very important to spend time with the teams and get to know what motivates them and what makes them tick. So when you need to develop a program, it'll be the program for them that fits to what they need and not a one size fits all.
I didn't get a chance to talk about this much, but I think it builds on what we just heard. We're in the process of sort of transforming our brand from just an HR organization to the people product organization. And what that means is we're treating our function like any other business would treat its function. We have our products, things that we deliver to the organization. We have our customers. And so how can we approach the work that we do in that mindset, VOC, doing more pilots, figuring out how do we go to market with our products? What's the right time? How do we make sure that our roadmap releases are integrated with the business and received in the most effective way? So from that, what I'm inspired by is the ability to sort of step outside of the comfort zone and do things that might seem like it's not in alignment with the function of HR, but actually it is. And so think of yourselves and run your people functions, HR functions, the way any other business would, and think of it in that way. And I think that will completely transform the way the business leaders receive it, because it speaks to them in a way I think historically it hasn't before.
Thank you all for opening up the way you have. And please join me in thanking our panelists. So we're going to open up to questions. We've got two mic runners. I'm going to let them control the show of who's asking questions. A lot of great areas of conversation, so feel free to dig into whatever is most interesting to you.
Elizabeth, and I'm an HR manager at a startup called Agari. And Danielle, this is really in response to one of the things that you said about focusing on people with high potential. And I think whether you're a big company and you have limited HR resources or a small company and you know that focusing on the few high potential folks will really help your business grow. So I'd love to hear from you or anyone else recommendations on how to do that.
Well, I think the first thing to do in order to even build on that is to know who your high potential folks are. So one of the things we've been spending a lot of time doing is am I on? Okay.
I think so, yeah.
We have been leveraging some tools to help the leaders be able to help us identify who are really the highest potential, who has the agility that we need, who has the ability to scale, who has the thought leadership and the strategic mindset, so that we can understand who that pool of individuals are globally across the company. And they have a huge hand in that. So the first thing is come up with an effective assessment tool, whether you build that internally or you leverage something outside that can help you identify who those people are. And then I think you start to engage with them. You start to understand what is about those individuals that have made them successful. Is it the experiences that they've had? Is it the managers they've had? Is it their background, their skill sets? So we do a lot of studying just to understand kind of what makes them great, what has enabled them to be high potential. We want to try to replicate that as much as possible to the extent that it can be, but then you start to unleash them in a way that you haven't done before. You figure out what is it that continues to make them thrive and motivate them, and you unleash them. And I think that's when you harness the real power that they're capable of achieving, and you are able to retain them. You're able to give them experiences that they otherwise would not have, and we've seen very positive results with that.
Hi, I'm Lynn from Waggle. So firstly, thank you for the great sharing. So my focus is on remote employees. So two parts to the question. Firstly, on a general level, how do you engage these remote employees to feel that they're part of the culture, part of the office? And secondly, how do you develop these people into leadership roles, especially the ones that have high potential, because it's kind of limited in terms of the distance and remote work and interaction. So
I'm happy to offer some input. We have quite a few remote employees. Frankly, I consider myself a remote employee. I work in San Jose, but I actually live in Southern California, and I commute up every week to San Jose. It's very untraditional, but it's worked for me, and the company has been very supportive of that. But we have pockets of people who are remote across the organization, and the things that have enabled them to be effective in spite of their remoteness is number one, the investment in technology. And so we have implemented VMR video capabilities so that people can, by their laptops, be present, even though they're not physically present in the room. So that's been a major investment that we've done, and I think that has just improved tremendously people's feeling of connectedness, and that you don't have to be physically there, but as long as people can see you, that will make a difference. We also invest and encourage leaders to, have their folks travel from time to time to make sure they travel to the home base, and making sure that there's a commitment there. But we also have developed, in some cases, some sort of guiding principles of how you conduct a meeting with people who are virtual. And we hold those very, dear to our heart, and we empower people to, if someone is not allowing the folks on the video or phone to speak, people are empowered to speak up and say, hold on, let's allow the folks who are not here. So people, I think, are very sensitive to it, they're conscious of it, and we've created the space so that people understand you don't have to be at headquarters to be successful.
Yeah, my name is Mike, Director of Business Operations for a startup called Endless in San Francisco. This question is probably directed at Flora and maybe Matt. But we've grown really fast. I think we're a couple of years behind BP in terms of size, but when we were young, a lot of employees were involved in everything. Everybody knew what was happening, and as we've grown, it's been hard to keep people informed at that same level. It's just not possible. So I'm curious how you guys control the flow of information, how you've solved that problem, keep people informed, but also, they need to focus, and it's just, yeah, you kind of manage that at scale.
Yeah, so for us, transparency is a big, it's very big. And since we started, and we started from our CEO emailing the whole pool of employees, as probably happened to you guys, every day, multiple times a day. And then we went to a place where when we meet every Monday during staff meetings, we make sure that every leader knows what to communicate back to their team. So I think we're very clear on the information that we are not ready to disclose to the rest of the employees, and not because we don't want to. It's just because it's internally confidential. And then we really make sure that that the head of departments go back to their teams and inform their managers, and their managers communicate to the rest of the employees. Another thing that we do is, like many companies do, we have a town hall every month. And we hold it once from HQ, and then we hold it from one of our warehouses, which is in Fremont, not too far away. And during that time, we make sure that everyone attends, whether they are in Arizona or in New York or in Florida or in Fremont. Everyone attends and is able to ask questions back. And during that town hall, we usually have 2 people come up that either volunteer or we select and tell their story. And that way, even if you've been at the company for 2-3 months, you get to know someone new and you get to see their face. And so next time that I'm the new employee and I'm talking to someone in the field, I know that person is already, because I've heard their story during our town hall. But it's hard to do that transition. I think we were very cognizant of what do we share, what do we not share, and how. And we decided to err on the side, we will share more, but we will make it a point to share.
Yeah, I think a couple things that I would add. One is you have to be really intentional about it. So it's not something that will always happen naturally. So develop a plan, know what venues and mechanisms and mediums you're going to use, and then stick to those. And then the other thing, I think you can find different practices online, but like Square, for example, I think they publish all of their notes from their meetings online so people can go see them. I think managers having consistent one-on-ones, so you can start to build some of that, those rhythms and standards really early. But know that when you hit a certain size, those practices will suddenly break down, and maybe you do a pulse survey or something where you start to get feedback and realize that. And just kind of start from a blank slate all over and develop that plan again of this is how we communicate, when, why, these are our mechanisms and that sort of thing.
And we do a time check. I think we have time for 1, 2 more. 2 more. So get your last 2 questions ready.
Hi, my name is Sarah Michelson. I'm CEO of a company called Adventure Philanthropist. We're a data analytics company that uses behavioral science to help employees engage in social responsibility. My question is, do you guys currently use CSR, and if so, how do you use it?
I mean, we're a mission-driven company in the sense that we're focused on providing a great experience. We help brands provide a great experience for their customers and employees. That mission translates back to everything that we do. In terms of like large CSR initiatives, we don't have any at our size. The types of things that we're super passionate about and investing in are things like diversity and inclusion, and those types of efforts at this stage. But from a standard definition of CSR, I wouldn't say it's one that we talk about consistently. It's more, what is our mission? And if employees have ideas about how they want to spend their time and add back to the community or something like that, then we're up for it.
Yeah, I think I mentioned that we implemented earlier this year in January of 2016 PayPal for all our 18,000 employees, a GIVE program where every year you get 5 days to take time away from work to volunteer for a cause of your choice. And some administration associated with that, but it's a huge benefit, one that did not exist. And again, it was part of a suite of enhancements to our benefit program that we rolled out. Now that we are an independent company, we have the freedom to do things that match with our values and the impact that we want to create in the organization. The other thing that I would mention, and I would say, even though it formally may not fall in the CSR responsibility, but we have a very impassioned CEO, Dan Schulman, and you may have heard that PayPal had plans to open offices in Charlotte, North Carolina, but based on some decisions that were ruled there, we decided to pull out, and it was a very public event, and he was very adamant and very visible about his reasons for making that decision, and the entire organization stood behind that. And so those are the ways that we want to make sure people understand the values that are important to PayPal, and we believe in the equal rights of every human being. And so you will probably see more things like that, but that was probably the most visible example of how we embody sort of our CSR initiatives.
Who wants to take us home tonight? It's the last question of the evening. It's a lot of pressure. We might squeak in two, because I feel like we had two good questions here.
Hi, I'm Brielle. I'm an HR consultant. So we touched on predictive analytics a little bit, but I'd love to know right now, what are some metrics that you guys are working on that you're doing in 2016 that maybe you weren't doing in 2015 to tell a really compelling story, and how is that driving your business forward?
I can speak to one thing that we've implemented that has been extremely beneficial, and it's called sort of an early warning system, and it's things that our compensation teammates have done to proactively look out in terms of, now that we know who our top talent is, what does their holding power look like from a comp perspective? Are there people who are nearing the end of a vesting cliff from an acquisition that we made, and how can we proactively get in front of someone like Facebook coming to try to tease them away by just being proactive. So that's one example. The other thing we have started doing, and this is not, I can't say we've automated in a sophisticated way right now, it's very manual, but we refer to it as our balance of trade. And so every quarter we look at who are we losing talent to, and where are we acquiring talent from. And when you look at that data set, it's very eye-opening. Number one, you discover, gosh, I'm losing talent to people that I wouldn't have expected to lose talent to, and I'm hiring from companies I wouldn't have expected to hire from. So it's very eye-opening, and it's something that I remember when we first unveiled it to the executive staff, it generated a lot of dialogue, because they have never seen anything like that before. Now, how we've gotten that data, we go to LinkedIn. I mean, it's very manual, so we've not been able to sort of build a robust system around it, but that just gives you an example of just being very creative and thinking in the mindset of a business leader. What would they want to see and what could add value? And it's been a hit.
Well, with that, please join me in a final thank you to a panel. This is a great conversation. Thank you. So, 2 items from here. Please don't forget to fill out your surveys, leave them on your chairs, and the bar will remain open. Please join us for having a cocktail, or if you want to come up and have a chat, please do that too. Thank you.